What up, Sleeper Nation? We're back with the second week of the free agency period. I am Nader alongside Sheahan, and let me know how you're doing so far.
Yeah, so far so good, man. The second wave of free agency hitting just about the same time as the third wave of COVID over here, so it's exciting to have a couple of waves to monitor, particularly with so much rookie chat coming out as well. It's a full-on time for us Dynasty aficionados.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, especially with the COVID wave, it's just all the more reason to stay in and start looking at all the free agent players that are getting signed and then using that as logic of, oh, okay, that means this team's looking for this player, this team's looking for this position, this team's looking for a quarterback, and so on and so forth. I think that is tons of fun. Of course, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the later people that just got signed, not necessarily the first weekers, the second weekers, and then, of course, a little bit of the mid-tier players. We're going to play a little bit of hot and cold. Of course, we need to discuss not only what team did they sign, but does this improve their fantasy stock? Because that's all realistically we're worried about is what happened to their fantasy stock, whether that's Dynasty or Redraft League. All right. So, of course, we have the news. There isn't too much going on because realistically the free agency is the news, other than the massive, gigantic scandal of Deshaun Watson. Sheahan, I think you had the current number of people complaining?
Yeah, I read recently, or in fact a couple of minutes ago, it was 24 people across 14 lawsuits now. And obviously it's a fairly delicate and serious situation for not just football fans, for all of us, really.
I'm stunned. I am stunned. That is my opinion of it so far. Of course, we just had a lawyer on a previous episode where he deep dives what exactly is going to go on, what's going to happen next. Of course, if you want to listen to that, that is going to be a past episode. I believe the exact last one that went on. But of course, that's all we're going to talk about that because, of course, it is still a developing situation. We don't want to be spreading fake news at this juncture. But all right, let's move on to the free agency signing. So we're going to play hot and cold. I'm going to list you a name, and you're going to list me if he's hot, as in his fantasy stock went up, cold, it went down, and then, of course, let me know why. So we'll start with one of my personal favorites. I was a huge fan of him, and unfortunately some injuries came or come, and it kind of hurt his chances, but Will Fuller. Signed to Miami, 1-year deal. Let me know what you feel.
I think it's hot. I think, if anything, it's going to be slightly above what he's been producing. He's been a pretty good fantasy guy when he has been able to get on the gridiron. Obviously, he's had his issues with injury and now with PEDs as well, but I think this is going to be a good situation for him. He's not going to be the same boom-bust guy. He's not going to be efficient with his touches, but I think he's going to see more volume from Tua. He averaged 14.8 fantasy points last year in half-point PPR leagues, and I think he's going to be at least around that mark, if not a little bit higher. He was obviously a deep threat for the Texans, but he spent a lot of time in the slot. He's used to playing opposite a contested guy. He had Nuke there for a while. Now he's got Devontae Parker. But he's going to make his hay on those underneath routes, going to get the ball in his hands, he's going to make those plays. He averaged 5.5 yards after the catch, which was the eighth. He averaged 5.5 yards after the catch last season, which was the 8th best in the league for receivers with 75 or more targets. And I think Tua is going to love having a guy he can throw to and get those yards after the catch and pad his numbers a little bit.
I completely understand where you come from there. I'm going to disagree a little bit. I think whenever you downgrade in quarterback, you're going to have a downgrade in stats. That's my personal opinion. Miami is supposed to be moving forward, a run-first team. And when there is a lack of volume going around, I'm a little skeptical. I mean, they still do have people like Preston Williams, Devontae Parker, and it might be a little bit of a crowded wide receiver room, especially for a team that says they want to be a little bit run first. I know there's a lot of skepticalness, a lot of here and there on whether they're sold on Tua. I mean, I think they are. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's the deep threat that will or could help Will Fuller reach his full potential. I am high on Will Fuller, the player. I'm a little skeptical on the scheme that he's joining.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Personally, I think it's going to affect Mike Gesicki more than Parker or Williams. Williams has been good when he's on, but he's been injured so much, a bit like Fuller, I suppose. But Gesicki was their primary pass catcher for a lot of last season, even with Parker there, and I think it's going to be him who loses that work over the middle to Fuller.
And that's unfortunate because tight ends are already so difficult to come by. And right when we felt like we had a strong newcomer to the tight end scene, they just bring on more pass catchers to reduce that volume. But, of course, Kenny Golladay, a huge disappointment last year for everybody that drafted him in the mid-third, early third to late second round. Somebody like myself, because I was so high on him last year. But to be fair, the 4 games that he did play, he was pretty phenomenal. He either passed over 100 yards or scored a touchdown. But let me know what you think.
I think it's cold. As you say, there's a change of quarterback, and I realize that's double standards, saying that Fuller's going to go to the moon GameStop style with Tua, and I'm saying that Kenny G is not going to have that same upside with Danny Dimes. But I really think that is a massive downgrade at quarterback to go from Matthew Stafford, one of the best quarterbacks in the league in terms of pure arm talent, the ability to make throws, to Danny Dimes, who struggles to hold onto the ball at the best of times. He goes to a stacked offense. It's going to be him. It's going to be Barkley. It's going to be Darius Slayton. It's going to be Sterling Shepard. It's going to be Evan Ingram. It's going to be Kyle Rudolph. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And as much as I love Kenny G, as much as I think he's going to be their man on offense, as much as I think he's going to have those big games, I don't think he's going to return that same value he did when he was at his peak in Detroit, at least not in that first season as a Giant.
So a lot of people right now are going to be skeptical of this because I do personally agree with you. I think it is a cold moment for Kenny Golladay and Kenny Golladay owners, but a lot of people are going to take this and go, but what about Stephon Diggs last year? What about Josh Allen? Everybody was super low on Kenny Golladay. On Stephon Diggs. And all of a sudden, he became an elite wide receiver 1. What is going to be stopping Kenny Golladay from doing the same?
Diggs went from Kirk Cousins, a good quarterback, to Josh Allen, who had a close to MVP season. Now, I'm not saying that Danny Dimes can't be that with that talent around him. We just haven't seen it. There's a quarterback downgrade there, absolutely. And I think that's going to cap his upside.
But it's not like Josh Allen was an MVP quarterback before this. I mean, a lot of people were already labeling him almost as a semi-bust. I mean, before Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen was touted as a deep threat quarterback with the gigantic arm. Yet statistically, he had the lowest completion percentage when throwing the deep ball. I mean, I don't think anybody really saw the type of impressiveness that Josh Allen showed last year.
I agree, and I think it was such a surprise for so many people that Diggs did perform the way he did. You know, you were saying that people were low on Diggs because of that relationship with Allen. I think, this is a case of lightning striking twice in the vaguely New York area, potentially, if it does happen.
I do agree, but I am a personal Danny Dimes fan. He's now, if Kenny Golladay is going to be the GameStop, then I'm calling Danny Dimes the diamond hands of those early owners. I'm personally a fan of Kenny Golladay anywhere he's going right now because it's not like Darius Slayton was, shooting up the stat sheet, being everybody's every week starter type player. He was a boomer bust at best, but a bust more than a boom. Sterling Shepard, he's injured 90% of the time. Evan Ingram, he's starting because of the lack of tight end talent around him or lack of tight end talent in the fantasy league. I mean, he had more rushing touchdowns than receiving touchdowns last year. And then, of course, Kyle Rudolph, I mean, he's getting there in age. We don't even know what he is expecting. Kenny Golladay, he's going to be the wide receiver 1. I would anticipate Daniel Jones, who actually had one of the best red zone completion percentage and touchdown percentages, to stick to the wide receiver that had the most red zone touches and touchdowns in the past 3 years.
I think that's fair. And with all that talent around, you say you're a fan of him. How early are you drafting Danny Dimes this year in Superflex?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Question without notice.
Question without notice. Those are the best type of questions. So, I mean, of course, I'm going to try to stay away. Here. I don't know if this changes or gives you a gauge, but I will draft Daniel Jones before I draft Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That's fair?
Yeah, okay. That's upside.
That's upside? Yeah. So, I mean, of course, I trust Kyle Shanahan more than I trust any Giants coordinator, but I think the immense run-heavy talent and scheme that the Niners run will force me to want to go another direction. Daniel Jones would be one of those options at that point. But, I mean, Kenny Golladay is a massive deep threat. They need to stretch the field. I don't mind this. I don't mind this at all.
I think it's a good landing spot for him. I don't love it as a Golladay owner, but as a football fan, I think it's going to be great.
So, say you're in a redraft league right now. Kenny Golladay, where would you take him?
It's a tough call. I'm not sure what his ADP is. If I'd thought about that, I might have actually done some research. I would be happy with him as my second wide receiver if I double tapped or triple tapped at running back in those early rounds.
So you're thinking third round, fourth round?
Probably fourth, fifth, somewhere around there, depending on the rest of the team makeup.
Yeah, if I see Kenny Golladay in the fifth round, I'll scoop him up. No questions asked there. Alrighty, so Curtis Samuel signed with the Washington football team. He was a little bit of a gadget player on the Panthers, but he had some production. At one point of the season, they had 3 startable wide receivers on that roster. Now he goes to a different team, a little bit less talent. I don't know if that's a hot take or so. A little bit less talent in the wide receiving pool there, but let me know what you feel.
I think he's colder as well. He got a lot of use last year. He was used as a running back. I would trust that Joe Brady is maybe slightly ahead of Scott Turner, although that's not a slight on Scott Turner. I think he impressed me a lot last year, but I don't see Curtis Samuel being that same player that we saw last year with Carolina. We've seen how Riverboat Ron and Turner have used him in the past. He was an S-route guy running those screens, slants, and streaks. And he was always that missed air yards analytics darling as well. I don't love the quarterback situation there. I think we're going to see him on a lot of gadget plays. It's going to be nice and fun watching him on Sundays with Antonio Gibson. Turner is going to have a hell of a lot of fun working out how to keep the league's DCs up at night with what he does with Gibson, what he does with Samuel. I hope they stick with Steven Sims as well. I'm a big fan of his. But to be honest, I don't think Samuel is going to be as fantasy relevant as he was last year.
So I want to pose a quick little question to you. If Christian McCaffrey was not hurt last year, is Curtis Samuel anywhere near as productive as he was?
I don't think so. You know, Mike Davis, who we might come to a little bit later, was effective, but Curtis Samuel is definitely that dynamic playmaker that they wanted, or they're used to having from Christian McCaffrey. You know, this is great news for DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson as an owner of both of those in various dynasty leagues. They're going to thrive on those yak opportunities, but so did Samuel. I think, you know, we're going to see. I think we've seen the best of Samuel. I think we're still going to see those big plays. He's still a guy for best ball. He's still going to be a decent player in your DFS teams. He's going to be hard to have in your lineup and trust.
Especially without a cornerback. Say they go out and draft one, then maybe you got something to scrap on, something to hope for, but I can't remember a time the Washington football team had multiple usable wide receivers on a fantasy roster. That's just not the style of the team right now. You got Terry McLaurin, who's also relatively inconsistent, if I could give out a hot take.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like Terry McLaurin is a surefire elite wide receiver must start one. That's not even a given in himself. So having a Curtis Samuel there or maybe a Logan Thomas is definitely going to stifle whatever type of production Curtis Samuel may produce. I'm sticking clear of him. In redraft, I will let somebody else fall for that bait, and then I will go ahead and pick up somebody else that I dearly like. Specifically, let's talk about Juju Smith-Schuster. back in Pittsburgh. I want to say this is a surprise. I did not expect this, especially he did not expect this. He said he didn't even expect to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But let me know how you feel about it.
I think this is hot. I think he's going to be better. He's got this 1-year prove-it deal. He turned down more money from the Ravens and the Chiefs to stay in Pittsburgh. He clearly wants to prove that he can, to borrow a phrase from around the NFL, play the guitar. We've seen him perform when he's had Antonio Brown opposite him. You know, he had an okay year this year. He had 97 catches, but didn't really get it done through the air. Still scored 9 times. So that's a lot to like about a guy who's disappointed. And potentially, he has disappointed relative to what we expect from him and what he's done in the past. I think sticking with Pittsburgh, he's been a little bit of a victim of a slow receiver market, and the questions over his ability to be that guy have stopped him from landing a big deal somewhere else. And the deal just looks ridiculous compared to what the Patriots paid for Bourne and Aguilar. I mean, I'm sure if Bill Belichick had his time again and had this information, maybe he's interested in bringing in Juju for that prove-it deal instead of old Stonehands Aguilar. Fantasy-wise... Oh, sorry. No, go ahead, man.
Never insult the baby dropper, Stonehands Nelson Aguilar.
We're talking fantasy football value here. Who do you want? Juju, Deontay Johnson, or Chase Claypool?
Give me Chase Claypool. I think the Steelers realized last year that when Chase Claypool got the ball in his hands, plays were made and games were won. And you can see a direct correlation between games won and games lost with Chase Claypool's stats. If they are intelligent and want to learn from last year, they would realize Chase Claypool needs the ball.
Yeah, we play this game for fun, most of us. He's a guy you want to root for if he's in your lineup, isn't he?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Such a nice person, cool guy. And Juju, I don't know if I want to root for him, if we're being completely honest.
Yeah, maybe we can go down the bagging his TikTok a rabbit hole again this week.
Oh, God.
Another Juju question for you. Is he a buy low in Dynasty?
See, that's tough because he has proven production. Therefore, he has value, as that term gets thrown around a lot. So realistically, you would have to give up a decent amount in order to get him. And I personally would not do that. But you also have to think the owner of Juju has to realize that Ben Roethlisberger throws the ball on average more than 500 times a year. You can't get a player in return that has more volume potential than Juju, which it makes it difficult. I would like Juju on my fantasy team.
Yep.
But I'm not willing to pay what it will take in order to get him. Because right now, it would take at least an RB2, if not RB1 in order to get him. Or you have to give up a solid wide receiver with a draft pick in order to get him. You're not going to be able to get a 1-for-1 trade for Juju to the point where you feel like you won that trade.
I do wonder if someone was really out on him, if you could get him for that late first, early second, or that pick and then a later stake nose pick, and then we're sort of splitting hairs between do you want Juju or Terrace Marshall or Amon-Ra St. Brown. And to be honest, that's that level. Personally, I would rather Amon-Ra, but I would take Juju over most of the guys that would be available at that point in this draft.
You have to go with situation a lot of the time. Scheme over player talent is something I preach because being in position to win or succeed is mostly all you need in order to actually succeed. If I owned Juju and somebody offered me Will Fuller, I would say no. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I would probably want Juju.
Yes, I would agree there. Alrighty. So before we move on to the next person, if he was to sign with the Chiefs, would that make his value higher?
No, I think it makes it lower. I think we've seen that unless your name is Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce, it's hard to predict what the Chiefs are going to do week on week.
Alrighty. Just wanted to pose that quick little question. Now, Chris Carson, a solid RB1. I like him a lot. A bulldozer, a little bit of a bowling ball, re-signed with Seattle 2 years. He is a top 10 running back when healthy. The only issue is he's never played a full 16 and now 17 game season. And I mean, if history repeats itself, which it will, it won't happen again. But higher or lower, Chris Carson?
I'm going to say hot. I think it's great to see him get paid as a 7th rounder. He's been such a productive player for Seattle that it's great to see him earn some money in a place that clearly loves him. He scored 9 touchdowns each of the last 3 seasons, averages 4.5 yards per carry, can play on all 3 downs. And even though he had so many injuries this year, he still had 7 fantasy relevant weeks. And I think he's a guy that a lot of people will undervalue if we're talking about those early rounds and who I might go. If I can get him in the 5th or 6th round as a 3rd or 4th running back, I am walking out of that draft absolutely laughing.
Oh yeah. Give him to me in the 4th round. I'll take it all day, even on Sunday. While playing, he is an elite RB1 fantasy football running back. I mean, the Seahawks, I assume they're going to go back to running it a little bit more than passing. I think we've seen what peak Russell Wilson looks like, and it's not enough to win a Super Bowl. So I'm assuming they're going to run the ball and go back to what did win them the Super Bowl. That's going to be Chris Carson carrying the load.
Yeah, totally agree.
Philip Lindsay, a fan favorite, signed with Houston, and I don't even know how to feel about this.
I've loved Philip Lindsay since he came into the league. I love the story. I love the fact that he's finally going to have to move out of his parents' house because he's playing in a different state. He's had 1,000 rushing yards his first 2 seasons. He's the only UDFA ever to do that. And all he's got in Denver is disrespect. And I hope he goes to Houston and lights it up. We've talked before about how crowded that running back room is. But we've got aging Mark Ingram, great locker room guy. We've got David Johnson, who can struggle with injury from time to time. I would not want to have Lindsay on my team in redraft necessarily in a 10 or 12 person league, but in Dynasty I would be scooping him up for whatever I could get him for if it's a 3rd or later. I think he's a low cost depth RB, and he's got RB2 upside. We've seen that every time he's had a decent run at it. Funnily enough, he's one of those weird guys who doesn't really fit the mold of what you think he is. You know, he's a little guy. He seems so young, yet he's sneaky old. He's 27, and he's not that good on passing downs. But if he can make hay on those first down, second down, maybe stay out there a little bit more, he's going to be better. We're doing hot and cold. He's going to be hot.
Oh, all right, there we go. I'm going to agree with you. I think he needs to get out of Melvin Gordon's shadow. I think David Johnson doesn't cast enough of a shadow to cover Lindsay's afro. I like Philip Lindsay a lot. I actually like him in redraft leagues. He's going to be a stash. You're not picking him to start him in your everyday week, but he's going to sit there on your bench for a little bit, and you're going to see how it plays. A lot of people, of course, in the later rounds, they love picking up a bunch of RBs and just seeing if one hits. He's going to be one of them that I am going to be picking up and seeing if one of them hits. But this guy is my crush right now. This guy, Josh Reynolds. We could spend a long time talking about how great of a signing I think this is and how great he is going to be on the Titans. This guy, I'm letting everybody know right now, I am going after Josh Reynolds in every draft, every redraft, whatever the format, standard, half PPR, full, 2 wide receiver, 1 wide. I am going for Josh Reynolds. I think he's going to be phenomenal. He's a big guy, great red zone threat, can get open. Unfortunately, he just didn't have the room to shine in the Rams offense, but he's going to do it right here on the Titans. This is it right here. I am peak performance.
I love Josh Reynolds. I think we are going to be tracking this all season. I love the landing spot. I was hoping he would end up somewhere like this. I think I might have pegged him to the Titans or possibly Tim Patrick. I think this is fantastic for Reynolds. I think it's a fantastic move for the Titans. And we were talking about GameStop. This is the to the moon. This is Josh Reynolds. You get him cheap, and he's going to blow the F up. I was so disappointed when I went to the waiver wire in my leagues this week and saw that not only do I own him nowhere, he was on none of the waiver wires. So hats off to the people I play with. I don't have a lot of regard for you most of the time, but the fact he wasn't on waivers is maybe testament to you. This guy is going to explode, and then this time next year we can both talk about how wrong we were.
You know what? We're not going to have that conversation because he will. I remember a couple of episodes, I had Peter as a co-host. He came and we had a fun discussion about OBJ, and I said OBJ's irrelevant. You should get rid of him as soon as possible. And then, of course, this year happened, and I decided to tweet at him just a couple times, on how I was correct. But Kenyon Drake,
Hey.
I don't know what's going on here. I just want to let everybody know I don't know what's going on here. To the Raiders, 2-year deal. It's not like you have a top 10 running back in Josh Jacobs. I mean, let's just disregard him and everything he's done for the organization. Let's just disregard that, and then let's pay him $11 million, which is like, what is that? That's top 15 money for a running back. So you have 2 top running backs on your roster, and fantasy owners in shambles, crying in a corner, crying at the club. And I don't even know what to say anymore. I'm disappointed to the max.
3 words for you, man. Hate the Drake. He's ruined Josh Jacobs' value. He's ruined his own value. I don't know what's going on here. Like you said, Kenyon Drake's been a weird story. Obviously, he blew up and won people leagues. And then last year, the Cardinals didn't really know what to do with him after seeing exactly what to do with him the year before. They didn't really use him in the passing game. They lent on him in the red zone, which is not really his forte. He was the least efficient red zone runner in the NFL. I don't know what Gruden has in store here. The only upside I could see is Carr does love to check down. He targeted his running backs 112 times last year. I don't know, man. This is the coldest of colds. It is good news, and this is hot. Chase Edmonds.
Okay. Ooh, okay.
I think they like what he's about. He's shown that he's electric. I think it's a slight boost potentially for Eno Benjamin, not to be confused with the goth kid down the road, Emo Benjamin. But they're going to add a north-south runner. It might be Fournette. I've been touting Ramondre Stevenson to them, to anyone who'll listen, but it's good news for Chase Edmonds and bad news for Jacobs and Drake.
I mean, say they had an elite offensive line, then maybe they could support 2 running backs, and I'm fine with it. Like, okay, go do your thing. But hey, when you cut the best center in the league, or trade him, I should say, when you trade your other right tackle, when you get rid of and trade your other guard, and then you cut the other left tackle, and then all of a sudden you have one starter from last year, and he wasn't even the best starter. He was okay at best, and then all of a sudden you don't have the great of the wide receiving room because you lost Aguilar. Your quarterback is a little questionable. Your offense I'm disappointing. And unfortunately, I have a good friend that is a Raiders fan, and I decided to shoot him a text and say, hey, give me your input. And he goes, it's a sad day to be a Raiders fan. That's what he told me. That's a quote.
Yeah, I've not seen anyone lose this much money in Vegas since the Mafia moved out of town.
Ooh, when you make a good point, you make a good point. And that is one of them. It's not like they had an elite defense. Their defense is bottom tier, and they had a good offense. They averaged 26 points last year. I don't know why they decided to dismantle the offense and not fix the defense.
Gruden does things differently. He's his own man.
He's built different. I'm not sure in a good way. Jamal Williams to the Lions. I like this guy. I like him. I don't like the signing. 2 years, $7.5 million.
Yeah, we were saying last episode we wanted to see him somewhere where he would be in more of a timeshare. And it's sadly not happened here. He's going to be a high-end handcuff. He's produced whenever he's been given the chance. I looked at his stats earlier. He's going to give you 700 yards from scrimmage and 4 touchdowns playing second fiddle. And that's pretty good for fantasy football. He's going to be a spot start if Swift misses time. What I did like about it, it sent shockwaves through all these DeAndre Swift truthers. And to be honest, if you're concerned that this is going to affect Swift's value as a potential top 5 RB, then maybe you weren't as high on him as you were claiming to be.
Oh, that's just throwing shade, especially because I'm definitely not one of them, so it makes me feel good inside. It hurts DeAndre Swift's value. I don't think there's any way you can deny. I don't know if you want to be able to deny it, because the truth is out there. They're not going to deny it, but he is productive. He's going to take some carries.
Yeah,
and if you take a couple carries, then therefore logically, your value isn't as quite as good.
I think there's a fine line, and we talked about it with Carlos Hyde and James Robinson. But there's a fine line between taking carries and allowing a guy to be fit and firing when you need him. And, Swift might not get 30 carries a game, but this is a chance for him to do more, or at least the same amount on 22, and keep some tread on the tyres.
I think that would be a good way to think about it. I hope it doesn't become a 50-50 to 60-40 and then stays about a 70-30. If it ends up that way, I think DeAndre Swift retains his value.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree.
So let's go to some smaller names. Keenan Cole, he went to the Jets. 1-year deal. I think there's going to be a lot of little mini 1-year deals here. A lot of prove-it deals out of these players, but Keelan Cole, a little interesting to the Jets. He's a depth player, kind of hope for the best, expecting the worst type of guy, but let me know what you think.
I'm going to say hot. He still took one of the rudest catches I've ever seen. A little one-hander pluck out of nowhere. Last year, when I was looking at his numbers, he did better than what I thought. He was the number 2 in yards and catches for the Jags, and equal first in touchdowns. That's not saying much for them, but it does show that he did get some use last year. He lined up in the slot 83% of the time. Obviously, Jamison Crowder has a mortgage on that at the moment, but the Jets can cut him and save about $10 million if they wanted to. To that end, I think Crowder still has a lot to offer in the NFL if they do, and if he does, I think he'd be a good fit in Detroit. The slot receiver role was productive for the Jets last year. The Jets slot receivers averaged 22.5 fantasy points per 100 plays last year, which compared to Cole Beasley, which most people would have said the best slot receiver in the league, he was averaging 25.8 fantasy points per 100 plays. So that shows that if Keelan Cole is in there, he's going to have weeks where he is startable, particularly in PPR leagues. He's probably not going to have that touchdown upside, but if you are looking for a floor, that is a person who has one.
When you go from the worst or one of the worst, if not the worst team in that football, and then you level up to the second worst team in the NFL, it's hard for me to say it's a hot landing spot and hot for your fantasy value. But I mean, there's nowhere to go from here. I mean, you got to go up at this point. So say the Jets are able to draft an offensive lineman, they're able to draft maybe a quarterback, or they're able to elevate Sam Darnold. I think, yes, this can be a good thing for Keelan Cole. But I mean, obviously, he's not going to be lighting up everybody's draft boards in the sleeper value, but he's something to keep an eye on. Probably after the draft, he's probably going to be somebody you're looking at to see if he has a solid week 1, if he has targets week 1 or 2, and then over there you're going to be able to scoop him up and then stash him for the best.
Yep, absolutely.
Rashard Higgins, one of the more bigger, this is not. It's hard to say you're a disappointment being a wide receiver 4 on the depth chart, but when OBJ got injured, I think a lot of people expected a little bit more out of him. He's probably going to stay that way. OBJ should be back. I'm not expecting too much out of him. He's just kind of a waiver, kind of a little bit of a handcuff, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's the point of handcuffing wide receivers most of the time? But he's like another Keelan Cole. You see him on waiver wires, you're having a tough week, and you go, here's a guy that might be able to perform if he gets that role.
Yes, smart.
Personally, if I'm looking for a Browns receiver, it's Donovan Peoples-Jones. He looked immense when given the opportunity and would like to see some more from him, particularly for dynasty owners out there. But, I mean, if you're carrying Higgins in a dynasty league, there's nothing wrong with that at this point. It's the sort of guy you might cut for someone with a higher upside, but at this point in the season, keep him on your roster and see what happens.
Exactly. Marlon Mack back to the Colts as well, 1-year deal. He was the starter before Jonathan Taylor got injured, and he was the one picking up the most carries before his injury. But of course, that was midway through the first game of the year. But let me know if you think this changes anything.
Let me answer your question with a question. Okay. Is this worse for Jonathan Taylor than Jamal Williams is for DeAndre Swift?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
Yes, because Marlon Mack, before the season last year, they said Marlon Mack is 1A, Jonathan Taylor's 1B. That means we expected a little bit of a 50-50 split.
Yeah, it's not great news for Nyheim Hines either.
Yes. I think it won't be a 50-50 split anymore. I think it's still going to be since they are a little bit more of a 3-headed back team, I think it's going to be 60-20-20 out of that, but that's not a good thing.
this is going to be one of those horrible backfields like the Ravens were last year, where you've got someone getting all the work between the 20s, and then Marlon Mack comes on, spells the fresh legs, and vultures a couple of touchdowns.
Exactly. I think this says Patriots backfield, Niners backfield, Ravens backfield. One of them, you're not exactly excited and happy to be a part of. But Anthony Firsker, if I said that right, re-signs with the tight ends. I think he's going to be a potentially pretty solid tight end. I mean, the starting one that his name is a little bit eluding me right now is gone and on the Patriots. So I think, when you're next man up and on number one on the depth chart, I think you have to have an ability to be a significant contributor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is exciting news for two reasons. As you say, Jonnu Smith isn't there anymore. Last year, Ferkser had the highest percentage of routes run of any tight end in the league, which shows that they're obviously keen to get him downfield, or at least didn't trust his blocking compared to Jonnu Smith. We've talked about our boy Josh Reynolds, but Ferkser might be their number 2 pass catcher in that offense. And most excitingly of all, with Ryan Fitzpatrick nearly out of the league, Anthony Ferkser can be the new, hey, did you know this guy went to Harvard, for every commentator?
No way.
Yeah.
He went to Harvard?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Fitzpatrick went to Harvard?
Yeah.
No way?
Yeah. Have you never heard that in any time his name's ever mentioned?
Oh, no. I knew that. No, I just wanted to play along with it. Did you know he had a beard too?
Yeah, funny that. He's been on a lot of teams. Earlier today, I thought Washington was the only one.
I couldn't believe it. Wait, hold on. He played for Washington?
Yeah.
Oh, no way. I thought he was a Bills quarterback for life. I don't know.
No, catch a ride in the Clue train, man. He's in Washington, where all old white men go to succeed.
On that note, John Brown to the Raiders. So, who needs a running back when you have John Brown? And who needs an offensive line when you need John Brown? Who needs anything when you have John Brown? And, of course, on a 1-year deal, he is, in my opinion, a great wide receiver. Unfortunately, he just has injury problems. He is a poor man's Will Fuller, and that is unfortunate. But he joins the Raiders. But what is a good thing is that Derek Carr supports 2 wide receivers. I still hear you giggling in the back. And
this is such a Raiders move. I don't know what it is, but this is such a Raiders move.
It is. It's, sometimes you zig when they zag. Sometimes, you go right when they left. They went diagonal when everybody was going straight. I don't know what to tell you. John Brown, I do think he's good. I think Derek Carr can support 2 wide receivers, whether that's Darren Waller and John Brown, or John Brown and Henry Ruggs, or whatever the combination may be at this point. But I'm still sad about the offensive line teardown. You need time to throw the ball.
Yeah, what's the point of having a deep threat if you're going to get nailed a second after it's snapped? Look, I think there's something here. This role was valuable last year. We saw Nathan Aguilar perform it pretty well and then get paid. It's a tough break for Henry Ruggs. I mean, why are you drafting this guy as early as they did without it being a meme for Al Davis drafting quick guys at this point? Like, you have the fastest player in this draft class and you keep bringing in deep threats. You're not letting him succeed with one thing that he could do as he's learning the NFL game. Look, Smokey Brown isn't really going to excite me too much in redraft leagues at the draft table. He's a guy, a bit like we said with Keelan Cole. Watch how he starts the season. He's going to be a good option in best ball. He's a cheap asset to acquire in Dynasty if you need a wide receiver with upside. But, I mean, be prepared to need to replace him a few times throughout the season.
Yes, especially because he definitely is not a durable type player. Of course, I said that just a minute ago, but I can't imagine. You don't have an offensive line. So you can't. It's not like you could run deep routes a majority of the time. You'll get sacked. And then their logic is, hey, let's bring in a deep threat. Let's draft a deep threat. And let's hope for the best. All right. Especially when you have a quarterback that's not like throwing deep. All right. So I'm done with the Raiders here. I'm done talking about the Raiders. I had enough of them. I'm frustrated with them. Jared Cook to the Chargers. Tell me how you feel.
I'm going to say hot. Cook's still a sneaky good player. He had 37 catches for 504 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. He's going to pair well with Herbert. He's a reliable pass catcher inside the hashes. He can get it done in the red zone. Hunter Henry had 93 targets and 60 receptions last year. They got to go somewhere. I think Jared Cook could be the guy, and in a rather bleak tight end landscape, Cook is a guy that is probably at that bottom tier where you go, oh, do I pick this guy, do I stream? If you do draft him, you're not going to hate to drop him. But there is that upside, that touchdown upside, and what should be a pretty good offense.
Jared Cook has been a solid tight end on whichever team he's been on, whether that was the Packers, the Raiders, the Saints, and now the Chargers. He'll be productive, not necessarily because of his stats, but the nature of the tight ends. He'll be fine. I don't mind drafting him. I don't mind starting him. I don't think you're going to have a better option when it all comes down to it. Herbert and Hunter Henry had a little bit of a mini connection. I expect that to carry on with Jared Cook. He's done it once. He'll do it again. John Ross to the Giants. Congratulations. I'm skipping that. I don't care about John Ross. Shad Perriman. Congratulations to the Lions. Congratulations. You got another job. Don't care. We're skipping him. Mike Davis to the Falcons. Actually, this one's a little bit interesting. We'll talk about Mike Davis. And that's because Todd Gurley, he's still not on a team. I don't anticipate him being on a team. But that means Mike Davis is potentially a starter for the Falcons. I mean, do you want to agree with me here?
It certainly looks that way. To me, this screams they're going to draft an RB early, whether that's Harris or Etienne or Javonte Williams. I mean, Mike Davis did well with CMC out, but he's not going to be a guy who's going to carry your offense. You're running out of time with Julio. You're running out of time with Matt Ryan. You've got Calvin Ridley on the rise. Don't tank a year at RB when you could get someone with a bit more upside. I think where Davis does fit in well is he can play all 3 downs and carry a big workload, unlike Ito Smith and some of the other guys that are there. If the Falcons don't add anyone, I'd happily have him on my fantasy roster. He was productive last year. He's going to be a mid-range RB2. You're probably going to get him cheaper than that. That's all there is about Mike Davis.
Mike Davis, he is somebody I actually will be targeting in drafts because Ito Smith, we've seen what he knows. We have seen what he could do, and it's nothing. So they necessarily don't have too much competition for Mike Davis to go after. I think he can actually take the job. And the Falcons, they actually do run the ball a lot in the red zone. I mean, Todd Gurley was the king of rushing touchdowns, especially last year. I don't mind it at all. AJ Green to the Cardinals, 1-year deal. I don't know how to feel about this. I don't anticipate too much out of it. I mean, he might play great for the first 3 games, and then he'll get hurt, and we'll never hear from him again. Are you interested in this?
Zero interest here. I think this is almost a big middle finger to Larry Fitzgerald to go, hey, we're replacing you with another old guy. It's possibly good news for Christian Kirk. He might see the CB3 instead of the CB2. And maybe he's a red zone option for Kyler when Hopkins has 4 guys all over him. But I think we've seen the best of AJ Green, and you want to see him go out on a relative high rather than just limp out of the league, which it looks like he's going to do now.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree there. Now, Deshaun Jackson, he might say something anti-Semitic on the Rams. Other than that, that's all I care about him. Gerald Everett to Seattle. Okay, so, I mean, the last time the Seahawks had a productive tight end was Jimmy Graham. And he wasn't even that productive. He was startable, but he wasn't that great. Other than that, that's the only really productive tight end they had. I think that offense just does not support a tight end, which is odd because you would think a play action, a little bit of a run first offense could support a tight end. But when you have 2 gigantic monsters on the outside, whether that's Metcalf or theoretically now Tyler Lockett as a giant, it's difficult to throw to a tight end.
The Seahawks feel like a team that use their tight end, and I don't know if it's because they have tight ends that sort of show up on red zone or make or miss critical plays as Jacob Hollister did, but I like it. I like it. I've liked Everett since he came out of college. I think he's a pretty good athlete for the position. I think a lot of people were high on him after seeing Sean McVay blow a lot of smoke up him on All or Nothing. But at this point, Everett's probably on your dynasty roster because he's been on your dynasty roster since you drafted him and you're waiting for that breakout. I think it's a good landing spot. I was hoping he might go to Tennessee, but as far as they go, I think he's going to get his touchdowns. And as we've talked about, tight end is bleak, and I think he's a guy you can stream. We've seen Will Dissly be pretty good there in the last couple of years, albeit on unpredictable plays. But if you like your plus athletes at the position, then you could do worse than Gerald Everett.
Exactly. Now, this might be a little troublesome, but Mitchell Trubisky, he's backing up Josh Allen, and I think it's safe to say Josh Allen's done for now. I don't know what he's going to do there. If I were him, I would just retire, with my head up, had a pretty good year, just hand the keys to Mitchell Trubisky. That's it. It's done. I don't know what he's doing there anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. If you just look at their draft capital, Trubisky went so much earlier. And it's strange after such a good season they'd bring in another quarterback or even a quarterback competition, but here we are. We know two things about Mitchell Trubisky. He loves kissing titties and he loves playing in the cold, and he'll possibly get to do both in Buffalo.
Oh, man. When you speak of that, Josh Allen's done. I mean, it's crazy how a team could have a quarterback that plays a near MVP caliber season and they still upgrade at the position. It's wild.
It's weird. Maybe we'll see some 2 QB sets. It's just a whole new world for Darrell Bevel and the team there.
That's crazy. And they don't even have to bring Aladdin along the 2 worlds. Now, so let's go. I'm going to start listing a bunch of low-level free agent signings. And then after I list them, you can kind of pick and choose on people you'd like to talk about, just so we don't take up everybody's time. And I'll start with Isaiah McKenzie, Jacob Hollister, Tyler Kroft, Josh Oliver. Those are tight ends right there, minus McKenzie.
I'm going to say Josh Oliver for the same reason as we've talked about. This guy's a dynasty guy. 87th percentile among tight ends for speed score. That's courtesy of playerprofiler.com. His best comp on there is Hayden Hurst, who the Ravens drafted in the first round in 2018. We know the Ravens like using their tight ends. I think he's a guy that if you're looking for a flyer in a TE Premium League or a deeper league, get him on your roster.
There we go. Texans dumpster diving. Let's see, Alex Erickson. That's an odd last name, but all right. Dante Moncrief. Are you interested in any of these guys?
I had to watch Dante Moncrief on the Patriots last year. He had 1 catch for 15 yards, so I think we're done there. I did like Erickson once upon a time when he was on the Bengals. Nice little slot guy. It looks increasingly likely that they are going to have someone else at quarterback this year. If it's Tyrod or Ryan Finley, maybe their slot receiver has some value. Maybe that's Alex Erickson.
Maybe they draft the quarterback and add a whole wrench in the system. But all right, Mike Boone, David Moore, Dan Arnold.
Not that interested in Mike Boone. I will say David Moore only because he's going to throw some people off. Someone's going to draft the wrong D Moore from Carolina.
That's actually a really good point.
But
that kind of went over my head. That went over my head. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and Dan Arnold is interesting to me. I liked him on the Saints. I liked him on the Cardinals. And he's going to be an upgrade on Ian Thomas. He's a converted wide receiver. And again, you're looking for a streaming guy, might find the end zone. He's not going to block much. And we've seen, as you said, Carolina support 3 fantasy-relevant wide receivers, albeit without Christian McCaffrey. But maybe Dan Arnold is that third pass catcher there for them. And before we go on, I would just like to cycle back to Brashad Perryman.
Okay.
It's good. I like a legacy story. He's in Detroit, where his old man played, so that's exciting. Someone is going to have to catch those passes there. Maybe it's Hockenson, maybe it's Perryman, maybe it's Tyrell Williams. But I just can't stop thinking about they had Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones, and it just reads like a meme where it's, can we stop and get Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones? No, we have Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones at home, and all it is Tyrell Williams and Brashad Perryman. So have fun with that, Lions fans.
There we go. So out of 100 fantasy football owners, how many are going to pick in their fantasy draft David Moore over DJ Moore?
There's going to be more than you think, because there's always the guy who's drunk or high or busy doing something else, or I know in my family league, we're just going to set up one of the cousins to do it because it's just the nice people we are. I think it's going to happen in 5 of every 100 leagues.
5 of every 100, because it's easy to make a decision because David Moore, DJ Moore. People are probably going to put in the Moore part because a lot of the time something like Yahoo, when you put DJ, his name won't come up. So you're probably going to have to put the Moore in. And after that, you're just kind of praying for the best at that point. But alrighty, so real quick, some free agents that haven't been signed yet. Anybody that you want to touch on, I'll kind of go over the list of them. T.Y. Hilton, Sammy Watkins, Antonio Brown, Cordell Patterson, Duke Johnson, Todd Gurley, Fournette. Lots of running backs here. James Conner, James White, Adam Humphries, Golden Tate, Lev Bell, and Damian Williams.
Sammy Watkins visited the Ravens. I think that's going to be a good landing spot for him. Not fantasy relevant. The Ravens, unless something dramatically changes, still going to be a bit of a graveyard for wide receivers. But he would be interesting there. AB, we've talked about, he's going back to Tampa Bay. Gurley will find a home somewhere. Maybe he's the guy the Jets take to lead their backfield. He's going to come on the cheap. Good experienced player there. Fournette, talked about maybe with the Cardinals. I thought he might have gone to Seattle, but they bring back Carson, maybe not. Maybe he's the guy for Pittsburgh to replace James Conner. I think it looks increasingly likely that James White comes back to New England, and the rest of them, flush them down the toilet.
There we go. Couldn't agree more. So that's going to wrap up this episode of the Free Agency Show. Next week, I think we had a little quick dialogue on what we want to do next week, and I think next week we want to pick the next man up players, the ones that left their prospective teams and now they got to elevate to that wide receiver role or running back role, and we're going to rank if we are interested in them or not. So, Sheahan, you want to let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, you can come on over to Twitter and find me. I'm at Sheahan Solo. That's SheahanSolo. And I am back looking at rookie wide receiver tape and doing player profiles there. I've had a couple of weeks off while I worked on another project, but now I'm back into grinding tape and largely complaining about the Australian Football League and the cricket at the moment too, so you'll have to bear with me while I vent my anger there. But come on and tell me how I'm wrong about Diami Brown and tell me why he doesn't suck.
And of course, you can find me at TopTierTactics_. And other than that, I am Nader, and we'll see you guys next week. Oh, sorry, Sheahan, you want to end?
No, I thought we were doing a good night from me and a good night from him. We'll get the rhythm of this soon enough.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's good night for you anyway.
It is good night for
you're
me.
all the way. You're all the way. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning, dude.
Just about.
There we go. All righty, guys. Good luck.